Okay, let's begin. We are streaming live on Facebook, I believe. Hello, I'm Ann Luther. I'm with the League of Women Voters. Welcome on behalf of the League, our co-sponsors at the Ellsworth American, the Mount Desert Islander, the Weekly Packet, the Castine Patriot, and the Island Advantages. These great papers have joined the League in sponsoring this series of events. The League has been promoting voter participation for over 100 years. If you're interested in joining us, we would welcome you as a member or volunteer. Our website is lwvme.org. For our event tonight, participants on Zoom will be muted throughout and the chat will be turned off. Participants on Zoom can submit questions through the Q&A box. You'll see that Q&A box at the bottom of the toolbar on your Zoom screen, but fair warning, we've received quite a few questions in advance by email. We've got more questions than we're probably going to have time to answer already, but don't let that deter you. If you've got a special question you want to pose, put it in the Q&A box and the moderator will pick it up. We are not monitoring questions on Facebook. We do have somebody monitoring the Facebook comments, but only to make sure that we keep the conversation civil. If you're over on the Facebook live stream and want to ask a question, it's not too late to join the Zoom. Go to lwvme.org/events and register now to get a participant link. The Facebook video will be available for later viewing on Facebook and through our online voter guide at vote411.org. The League of Women Voters of Maine posts recordings of forms in order to inform voters. These recordings are unedited. Viewers may share or embed the complete video. However, no parties are authorized to download, edit, or distribute any part of this recording without written consent from the League of Women Voters of Maine. Excerpts and/or edited clips of recordings may not be used for partisan, political, and/or campaign purposes. We appreciate your cooperation in this. Now, let me introduce our moderator for tonight, Jill Goldthwaite. Well known to many of you, Jill has been a thought leader in our area for some time. She formerly served 4 terms as an independent state senator and now writes as a columnist for the Ellsworth American and the Mount Desert Islander. Here's Jill. I'll see you back here at the end.
Thank you, Ann. It's a pleasure to be here with 2 legislative friends, and the hour will go quickly, so let's get started. First, introductions. Nicole Grohoski is currently a member of the Maine State Senate after she won a special Senate election in June to complete a term ending this December. She was raised in Ellsworth by her mother, a school nurse, and father, a Vietnam veteran and electrician. Senator Grohoski shares her family's commitment to public service and the well-being of our community. She drives from Meals on Wheels, volunteers with Green Ellsworth, and is on the board of the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. In her 2 terms in the Maine House, she was a member of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. She graduated from Middlebury College and works for a Maine-based mapping company. Welcome, Nicole. And Brian Langley has a combination of experiences that includes nearly 3 decades in public education as a career and technical educator and administrator, combined with over 3 decades in the private sector as the owner of a small business with 35 employees. Brian served in the legislature for 10 years, serving on the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee for 8 years, chairman of that committee for 6. He served 2 years on taxation, 4 years on marine resources, and 2 years on the Labor, Commerce, Research, and Economic Development Committees, all policy areas in which the private sector, business sector, and policymaking intersect. After terming out of the legislature, he was asked to be executive director of the Bridge Academy, Maine, a nonprofit he helped to found, which has helped Maine students earn over 10,000 college credits at greatly reduced or free tuition. Brian is married to Jane, has 2 children and 3 grandchildren. Welcome, Brian. We have some ground rules, of course. 3 minutes for opening statements, 3 minutes for each question provided in advance, and there are 3 of those questions. A 1-minute rebuttal if the other candidate requests it. Questions may be submitted by Zoom, but as Ann said, we have a lot. We'll cover what time allows. There will be 2 minutes each to pose questions submitted that were not advanced questions and 2 minutes each for closing statements. These are all limits, not requirements. So if you have less to say than that, that's okay too. That'll let us get more questions in. Opening statements. Brian Langley, you're on.
Thank you, everyone, and it's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Brian Langley, and I would be pleased to serve again and represent Senate District Number 7 in the State Senate. Jill had mentioned that I held that position for 8 years and termed out, and I'm looking to come back into that role because I see quite a need for my expertise and the skills that I learned while I was in the legislature. I see this as an interview tonight for this job, and I would like you to walk away at the end of this interview thinking that I have the skills and the experience in order to best serve this county. I'm the chef owner of the Union River Lobster Pot, spent 27 years teaching culinary arts at Hancock County Technical Center, 10 years in the legislature. But I also chair the Maine Lobster Marketing Collaborative, which looks to promote lobster across the country and the globe. I serve in the Ellsworth Area Chamber of Commerce Board and as well as the Maine State Chamber Board. For me, the top issues facing Hancock County are first and foremost the lobster industry we have heard a lot about is facing incredible challenges, being red listed by Monterey Bay out in California, and also threats to fishing grounds that from offshore wind. Second, for me, as a lifelong or a career-long educator, the status of education in Hancock County is not really good. After 2 years of the pandemic, kids have come in quite a bit behind. There's a lot of conflict in education at the moment. Parents absolutely have a right to know what's being taught in school, but nobody has a right to abuse or to bully teachers. And as a state senator and having worked in that arena, I would convene all the parties. It takes leadership, and it'll take leadership to restore our community to whole again, to best serve our young people. Lastly, I'd like to be a voice in the Senate for small business. I feel there's a war on Main Street at the moment, and policies that have been enacted over the past 4 years are really detrimental to small business. In many cases, we're being treated as if we're large, major corporations. So there's a lot going on out there in Hancock County that I believe that I have the experience for and the understanding to be able to address these issues once getting into the legislature. So my operating, the way I operate is to look for threads of truth in every testimony and then weave good public policy from that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Nicole, your turn.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It is great to be here with you this afternoon, or maybe it's evening. It's still light out, at least. Thank you for your interest in being here. I'd, of course, like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Ellsworth American, the Blue Hill Weekly Packet, and the Mount Desert Islander, as well as our very able moderator for hosting this event for our community. As many of you know, I grew up in Ellsworth, and I have made my home here as an adult. I am very grounded here, but I have also defined myself a bit of an explorer, like when I paddled the 740-mile Northern Forest Canoe Trail years ago, becoming the first woman to do so. So in case you're wondering about canoes on my signs, there's a long thread, but the real metaphor there is that we're all in this together. But I couldn't really find a job as an explorer, so I became a cartographer. And that career allows me to work remotely from really anywhere in the world, but I chose to come back to my hometown because I wanted to make a difference in the place that I love most. I have long been dedicated to improving my community. I served as a volunteer firefighter and a wilderness first responder. And more recently, as you heard, I have been volunteering with Meals on Wheels and Green Ellsworth. But 4 years ago, I decided to run for the State House of Representatives because I care deeply about the future of our region and our state, and because I believe we need energetic young leaders to solve the complex problems that we face. It has been a true honor to serve as a state representative and now as a state senator for our region. During my time in office, I have made it my top priority to listen and to learn from constituents. I have met many of you at your doors, or maybe spent a morning with you at one of my regular Coffee with Constituents events. Perhaps we visited around town and sometimes even at the State House. And if we haven't yet met, I look forward to that opportunity in the future. It is not just my goal, but I see it as also my duty to be as available, approachable, and transparent as possible. And that is because it is your input that directs my work in Augusta. Talked with thousands of people in this district over the past 4 years, and I am determined to continue to listen to you and seriously consider your concerns and your ideas for change. The things that I learned from everyone that I talked to have helped inform my work in Augusta, and some highlights of that were votes to guarantee healthcare access for people with pre-existing conditions and surprise medical bills and rein in big pharma, lower the cost of living by increasing our homestead exemption and property tax fairness credit programs. Of course, better funding our schools by increasing teacher pay as well and supporting career and technical education, investing in infrastructure, roads, bridges, drinking water, broadband, and housing have been top priorities, as well as protecting the sustainability of our marine resources and the livelihood of people who depend on them. I've been proud to work with a legislature that has accomplished so much in the past few years for the benefit of Maine people. And we do that by working together as
Can you finish
colleagues.
up, Nicole, please?
Yep, I'm on my last bit.
All right.
No matter where we're from or where we fall on the political spectrum, I'm proud to work with my colleagues and have a strong record of bipartisanship. And I do look forward to our conversation this evening, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue to serve as your next state senator for the next 2 years. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now we have the 3 questions that the candidates received in advance. They have a maximum of 3 minutes to answer those. I'll go to Nicole first on the first question. What are the impacts of changing climate in your district, and how can they be addressed by the legislature?
Thank you. When I think about my job in Augusta, I know that I have to balance the challenges of today with the challenges of the future. And I do have to be concerned that people can make ends meet right now, and also consider what the future will look like for our children. So when I see reports about lower property values because of sea level rise on the coast, or ocean acidification and bigger rain events that affect our harvested marine species, and things like ticks and associated illnesses, I know that we are already paying the cost of climate change in action. In Ellsworth, Graham Lake often looks like a desert now due to drought conditions. And on Deer Isle, the causeway is threatened by bigger storm events and sea level rise, to name just a few local examples. In order to reduce our emissions, we need to transition to local renewable energy and electricity for our heating, cooling, and transportation sectors. Right now, Mainers are spending too much money on fuel that we buy from out of state, and we are dangerously subject to the global volatility of fuel prices. We could instead keep that money in our local economy by building clean energy solutions here at home. The legislature has supported technical education programs for workers in the efficiency and renewable energy generation fields, because we know that addressing climate change and growing our economy can go hand in hand. I have served 4 years on the legislature's Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee, where many of the conversations about climate change and solutions take place. And from that position, I've been able to help craft legislation to clean up our electricity supply, support investments in energy efficiency, and help Mainers of all income levels become more energy independent. We are, of course, learning as we go, and I was pleased to be able to work on legislation in my first term, which allowed for more renewable energy generation. And now we are looking at how we can improve that program. For instance, looking at policies that better protect farmlands and forests and encourage development instead on rooftops, landfills, and maybe even over parking lots. We are also very busy in the legislature working on implementing the consensus recommendations of the Maine Climate Council, which is a diverse group of industry leaders, business owners, scientists, academics, policymakers, and youth, including many of my constituents who live here in the Senate district. For the past 2 years, I've served on the technical and scientific subcommittee, and that has been a great opportunity to keep up with the latest research happening in our state and region, and it helps me to understand what solutions might be best for us here in Maine. So in short, climate change is a serious issue on the coast of Maine. We have a responsibility to act. Fortunately, we have many solutions, and it will take many solutions. And those are already underway or identified for action in the coming years. So I look forward to continuing this work in the next legislature and have the knowledge and relationships necessary to make progress on this complex issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Same question to Brian Langley. What are the impacts of changing climate in your district and how can they be addressed by the legislature?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I love living here on the coast of Maine with fresh air, beautiful coastline, and the wildlife that I see every day here on the historic banks of the Union River. And it makes me really glad that I live here, and protecting the environment is really important to me, as you know, ecotourism and the tourism industry, of which is so important to Hancock County, really relies on a good environment. You know, I consider myself a market environmentalist, and market environmentalists seek to harness the ingenuity of humankind to address environmental challenges. We need an approach to climate change that will be inclusive and allow for creativity and ingenuity to flourish. Market environmentalism is an optimistic form of environmentalism, which rejecting the doomsday defeatism that dominates most public debate about the environment. And it seeks to take advantage of decentralized decision-making, markets, prices, property rights, and human ingenuity to improve our world. Now, the market approach is opposite to the command and control environmentalism, which comes from a centralized bureaucracy. This approach has often a fundamental misunderstanding of economics, ignorance of previous environmental scares, and a lack of understanding of environmental progress. And in the past, it's been claimed that traditional environmentalism and market approaches are contradictory. I don't believe they are. They are not the same, but they are complementary and really necessary to address the 21st century challenges. Now, I believe that free markets, unburdened by cumbersome red tape and central direction, can develop the technologies to reduce carbon emissions and improve our environment. Now, if we truly want results, and the threat is as serious as it's made out to be, and I believe it is, the evidence is there, we cannot leave people on the sidelines. For example, I belong to a group called Climate Work. It's a network of businesses and business leaders that are taking action on climate change to meet its challenges and to seize the opportunities it presents to build a more sustainable economy for the future. One of the goals is accelerating the transition to a new post-carbon economy through the rapid adoption of strategies, policies, and technologies that will support both new and evolving companies and remove impediments that limit the ability of businesses to adapt and grow. I'm really excited about this approach to unleash the power and creativity of Maine entrepreneurs rather than top-down, heavy-handed businesses killing policies. As an example of heavy-handed business killing policies are the policies affecting our lobstermen. Being unfairly red-listed after nearly 100 years of conservation practices is unbelievable. Maine has excelled in its ability to create a sustainable fishery, and it's an example of how common resources can be governed sustainably and fairly within a community. I believe community-based models work well because Maine's small population creates small communities where participants know and trust each other. If re-elected to the Senate, I will promote a market approach to environmentalism that reflects our Maine communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next question, and then I'll go to Brian first on this one. What are the major economic problems in your district, and how do you propose addressing them locally and in the legislature?
Well, this is near and dear to my heart, Jill, and I'm glad to see this question in here. You know, the major economic problem in Hancock County right now is the lack of skilled workforce to meet the needs of our community. As you look around town, Ellsworth and other areas, you'll find that businesses have cut hours. Businesses have cut out days of services. They've reduced the services that they've offered. Many have closed their doors completely due to lack of help. Small business owners are losing heart, losing the entrepreneurial spirit that is the backbone of Maine. I hear every day that owning a small business is not fun. As a lot, business owners are not going to complain. They don't complain. They will simply sell out or close their doors and walk away. And it's already happening. We find that businesses are competing with the government for employees, and we have to address this. It's not sustainable. Last week, for example, I had an employee who was a recent hire come up to me and say, I can't work anymore. I'm making too much money and I need to get renter's assistance. This was a person who was making around $300 a night, 4 or 5 nights a week. And it was really sad because she was commenting and telling her coworkers that she was getting done for that reason. So we've built this in as a way of life, in that we're going to reduce your work effort. You're going to work 1 or 2 shifts a week, and then so you don't make too much money. So also for small business and a threat to small business are the policies that have been enacted over the past 4 years that treat small business as if we're corporations. So, we all have to next year have to provide retirement plans for our employees. There's a 6-month waiting period, and I'm only open 5 months a year. I set it up this year because it's the law. It cost me thousands of dollars, but people will not take advantage of it because we're a summertime seasonal operation. So going to Augusta to be able to be a voice is really important as to what the effect of policies that are enacted in Augusta have out on the street on the front lines. But it's not all doom and gloom. I think that education is the answer, and showing our students at an early age is a bright future for them here in Maine. And that is, there's a group that's working and feasibility for a new technical center in the area to train students for high wage, high demand jobs here. I've been working for the past 4 years, creating pathways for students in Hancock County and across the state to high wage, high demand jobs here in Maine. My plan, if returned to Augusta, is to fully develop the Maine After School Network, to bring in our tradespeople, our public servants, and be able to work with students and show them there's a bright future for them here in Maine.
Thank you very much, Brian. And Nicole Grohoski, you're next. The major economic problems in the district and how to address them locally and in the legislature.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Brian, for your thoughtful comments as a business owner in our community. I certainly agree with a number of the points that you made, and we'll try not to be too repetitive. And I think part of the reason that we're having shortfalls in our labor market is that there's a lack of affordable housing and childcare, and that's challenging to our health and our wealth. And also, we have an ongoing underinvestment in behavioral health care, which can make it hard for folks to be working to their full potential. I am proud of our work in the legislature to address the rising cost of living, which I see as another challenge in our area. And we did that through a number of ways, but for example, lowering healthcare costs and property tax burdens. And we, of course, must continue to fight corporate greed on behalf of working families, our elderly, and our small businesses. Climate change, as we already discussed, I see as an economic problem, and of course, the federal regulations on the lobster industry. Some of these challenges can be addressed locally or at the state level, and others are largely out of our control. I think it's important that we are upfront and realistic about what problems we can address, and that will help us to better prioritize our limited resources to the benefit of Maine people. For example, inflation is global in scope, and its drivers are largely out of our state's control. However, we are not powerless to lower the cost of living. And during my past 2 terms, I have focused on that for people in our community. Some of the ways that we've done that, we expanded the homestead exemption and the property tax fairness credit to help people afford their housing. We've removed red tape for heating assistance and prioritized investments in weatherization, which is super important as we approach winter. We have also created low-cost drug programs, income tax breaks for retirees, and tax credits for working families. And these are all things that I supported to lower our cost of living. And if re-elected, I will continue to look for ways to lower the cost of living for Maine people. In order to address housing shortages and affordability, the legislature and the governor have recently invested in new housing for low and middle income families and seniors, including in rural areas. And we've expanded programs for direct property tax relief. We also expanded access to high school and college trade education to fill gaps in our construction workforce. And as the daughter of a retired electrician who's hoping to not have to go back to work, I'm very pleased with these investments. And right now, a group of legislators and expert stakeholders are meeting to assess the effects that land use regulations and short-term rentals are having on housing opportunities. And I look forward to reviewing their recommendations later this year and hopefully advancing some solutions in the next legislature. We do also need to prioritize childcare access and affordability. And this is a policy area that I will admit I need to learn more about. But fortunately, I have heard from some fantastic childcare providers in our district who are offering their ideas and willingness to work together for solutions in this area.
Thank you, Nicole.
Lobstering, as we've discussed.
We're going
Yep.
on to the next question now. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. My timer was
Last of these
messed up.
questions. No worries. The next question, we'll start with Nicole, and it is, what are the challenges for healthcare in your district, including mental and behavioral health, and how should the legislature address them?
Thank you. So some of the top healthcare concerns that I hear when talking to voters is a lack of healthcare providers in our area, and a concern that our rural hospitals and nursing homes are struggling to stay open. Expanding Medicaid, which the voters of Maine approved and the governor and legislature have now funded, has been a critical way to provide healthcare to tens of thousands of Mainers and ensure that our hospitals can stay open, since those payments are critical to their bottom line. And I will continue to support expanded Medicaid for as long as I'm in office. Along those lines, we expanded access to preventative dental health care and to an estimated 217,000 Mainers. And this is another way that we can save money not having costly emergency room visits, and it will help make healthcare more affordable and keep our hospitals open. The loss of the Island Nursing Home, I know, has been hard on families in Deer Isle and Stonington, and as well the nearby Bluegill Peninsula. I think a lack of housing is part of this challenge, but in speaking with constituents, I have learned that some requirements like staffing ratios may need to be modernized, and that is something that I'd like to work on because I know how important these facilities are in the communities that they serve. The legislature also recently invested $25 million in Maine hospitals to keep those facilities open so that Mainers everywhere can access healthcare where they need it. And I'm very supportive of that effort. We also have done our best to expand educational programs so that we can get more people into the nursing profession, and a pilot program to recruit doctors into our state with loan forgiveness options. And I think we need to continue to look at solutions like these to make sure that we have enough people to care for everyone who lives in Maine. One great idea I recently received from a local fire chief was that we could better streamline a process for veterans to become EMTs or paramedics. And that is a bill that I'm very interested in working on in the next legislature, as well as just expanding EMS in general, because it's something that is very challenging in rural areas, and we need to be able to recruit and retain people in these fields so that everyone gets the healthcare that they expect when they call 911. And I would just wrap up by saying these are challenges, but they are also opportunities. And I think it's just very important that we approach these challenges being open to all solutions and thinking creatively, and also looking around to see what has worked in other states for solutions that could work here as well. And I'm committed to approaching these problems and others that we have discussed this evening, and I'm sure we will continue to discuss with my best efforts and hard work, and hope that we can continue to find solutions for Maine. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Brian, the challenges for healthcare in the district, including mental and behavioral health, and how should the legislature address those challenges?
Well, thank you. This is something that I've worked on for a lot of years. First, I recently met with my provider, had a checkup, and it is the lack of providers, in which I think is the #1 concern for healthcare in Hancock County and in the state. As I went to my last checkup, my primary care person told me that there were only 2 providers in the building when there should be 9, and it was putting incredible stress on the system. The nursing shortage is well documented. I ran a task force called the 21st Century Economy and Workforce in the legislature that identified that we were going to need 3,200 nurses in Maine by 2025 to address those people that were retiring. Now, what has exacerbated that shortage is the pandemic and the stress that put on our nursing corps. Now, in that After I left the legislature, I continued to work on the nursing shortage in my work with Bridge Academy, Maine. I helped create a pilot program that created a streamlined pathway for students at Hancock County Technical Center who are in the Allied Health Program that enables the students to take early college courses designed to meet nursing school requirements along with their CTE courses and Certified Nurses Aid or CRMA. Once completed, the students are given the next available slot in Eastern Maine Community College's nursing program. And upon graduation, those associate RNs have the opportunity to work for Northern Light where tuition assistance is available to get a BSN degree from the University of Maine. All in, a student would have to commit around $11,000 for a nursing degree into a high wage, high demand job. So these are critical investments that we can make to not only help our healthcare system, but also help students that are here in Maine realize a high wage, high demand job. Now, on top of that, I'm working on and have drafted a research proposal to identify career interests and job satisfaction indicators of nurses who love living and working in Maine. This research project will then ultimately help counsel young people who possess the same characteristics to consider the healthcare field in Maine. So what we're looking to do is create a pipeline, identify those students who this is a really good fit in Maine and help assist them along the way to meet those needs. Now, we have to have a skilled workforce if we're able to meet the needs of our citizens. At the same time, identifying those who are most likely to enjoy working and flourishing in a healthcare system is crucial to our healthcare system. But we have a lot of demands on the healthcare system. So I'm ready and willing and able to work on those and will continue to work on those.
Thank you, Brian. This is a question that I haven't seen asked too often before, and it's really a good one. I'll give it to Brian first. This is now we're into the additional questions from chat or email, and you have 2 minutes to answer each of these. So the first to Brian is, what are your priorities for youth engagement in Maine? What will you do to engage youth in the political process, even those who cannot yet vote?
Well, I have the pleasure of working with, through Bridge Academy each month with teachers across the state that are teaching early college courses, English, math, science, and history. Now, the history teachers, this is professional development. And across the state, what they're most interested in doing right now is working with their students in their social studies classes about engagement, about being able to discern, false news from real news, how to engage in civil discourse. And so that is what the currently is was going on in the schools and with the teachers that I work with. So it's really refreshing to see, and it's all within the confines or the parameters of the early college courses that are being taught around the state through the Bridge Academy. So I see where, living history, where our history teachers are feeling the societal pressures of how do we equip our young people with the tools to be able to work in our society and be able to communicate, and to be able to work with their government and understand how to interact with their government. So I'm very, very pleased and excited with our core of teachers that have picked this up.
Thank you, Brian. Same question for Nicole. The priorities for youth engagement in Maine, and how will you engage youth in the political process, even those not old enough to vote yet?
Thank you. That is a great question, and certainly one I think a lot about as a person who's somewhere between on the high end of the youth spectrum, they tell me. I have been really honored to be able to work with multiple groups, such as Maine Youth Action or Maine Youth for Climate Justice, on legislative priorities that they have. And those groups really represent and include students from around our state and other young people. So that's been a phenomenal opportunity. And I think the really important part of working with these young folks is making sure that They feel that they are welcomed into the process and that we can help them move through the legislative process and see success when possible at the end. And we have been able to do that, which has been, I think, a phenomenal experience for me as a legislator and hopefully for the youth as well. One of the things that I have really enjoyed doing, even though it was limited for a period of time, has been visiting schools. There are just such amazing questions that kids will come up with about the legislative process or about why you decided to run for office. I got a question that was, when was the last time you saw a snake? So you just really never know what might be on the minds of our young people, but you will never know unless you go and talk to them. So that has been a real treat to visit the schools and also to have the schools visit the State House. I think that there is a lot about the State House that you don't understand until you go there. And I would welcome, of course, anyone to come visit the State House. I never did do that as a student. And I think that's something that I would like to see all of our local schools prioritize when they're studying Maine history and Maine government. And I think that in general, we just need to be supportive of policies that allow young people to be able to register to vote easily and be able to access information about the legislative process. And to that end, I would conclude by saying I would really like to see a modernized website for the legislature that's a little bit easier to find information that people are looking for. I think that will help people really of all generations. And that is something that is on my to-do list for the next session.
Thank you. The next two questions I'm going to do is a lightning round. So I'm going to ask for a yes or no answer from each of you on these. Do you believe Joe Biden was legitimately elected president in 2020? Nicole?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Second question, will you accept the outcome of your election if you lose? Nicole?
Yes.
Brian?
Absolutely.
There you go. Thank you. Got that out of the way. That came in a bunch of times. Next question, and 2 minutes each on this. It's kind of a follow-on to those. Would you support any changes in election law? Brian, I'll go to you first.
Support any changes in election law? You would have to, I guess, if the parameters were such that it had gone through the legislative process, a bill put in and it got its day, and it got public hearings, and then it went through the committee process, and then ended up onto the floor, and it received a majority of support. Then I could see myself, voting on changing election laws. As you know, and as Nicole knows, there are a lot of bills that get entered that never get out of committee, and so just to say I would support any of those, I can't do that. But if it makes it through to the process and it is a really good bill and it makes it to the floor and has strong support, then I would support either passage or killing it, depending on how the outcome was.
Thank you, Brian. Nicole, same question. Would you support any changes in election law?
Thank you. I definitely appreciate the comment that one would need to know what such changes were before being sure. But I do feel very good that the legislature has made a lot of positive changes recently in election law. An example of that would be that we passed a law that I co-sponsored, which will allow independents to vote in primaries starting in 2024. That is something that is a change in election law, but I think is positive in terms of engagement with Maine voters. We also established an automatic voter registration system, which just cuts down on bureaucracy. So if you were to go to the DMV and you've moved, why not get your voter registration updated at that time? So that's another example of a positive change in election law. And I think it's important to recognize that there are opportunities to improve any system. And I certainly would support things that protect access to the ballot box, especially our tried and true same-day voter registration is a really important way that people can have access to voting who are eligible voters. And I would continue to support that as well. So like Brian, I definitely would want to look closely at any possible changes, but be open-minded to the fact that some changes are for the best.
Thank you very much. Next question, first to Nicole. What position would you take on abortion rights? Should a woman have the right to choose?
Yes, I absolutely believe that a woman should have a right to make that choice, and especially in consultation with her medical providers. And I think that Maine law right now does ensure that choice is possible. And it's really important to recognize that no law is set in stone, and that it's important to elect pro-choice candidates in order to maintain that access to abortion, which really, in my view, is not the business of me or the government, but really the business of the people that are affected by the choice.
Thank you. Brian, what position would you take on abortion rights, and should a woman have the right to choose?
Well, I have a pretty strong record of supporting women's reproductive rights in my term in the legislature, and I would not vote for any changes to the law as it currently exists. Pew Foundation did some research, and in Maine, 65% of the people in Maine approve of the law that's on the books. And I would follow this out, that if there were any attempt to change the laws, we have a people's referendum system that would rise up, and the 65% of the people in Maine would come out and show their support for the laws currently on the books. So I see this law staying intact and in place for quite a while.
Thank you very much. Next question, first to Brian. Should the state pay to allow parents to send their children to any school they want?
That's an interesting. Education is where I spent most of my time. And we have had this come up in front of the legislature a number of times. Things with charter schools, of which I supported, are important. And then we have recent, I think, Supreme Court ruling that says that those other schools cannot be discriminated against. But I would caution and just be careful that the integrity of the education system and the school that's educating our kids, all of those standards have to be met, and they are pretty clearly outlined in education. So I'm a little wary of what might pop up in a way that might take advantage of this and not be to the benefit of our kids. So close scrutiny and close monitoring and making sure that our academic standards are as high as they can be is, I think, the way to go.
Thank you, Brian. Nicole, should the state pay to allow parents to send their children to any school they want?
Thank you for that question, and thank you, Brian, for your thoughtful comments on it. I think that you definitely were spot on when you said that there are certain standards that we would want to see. I think as taxpayers and as residents of the state regarding schools and education, so it would be important to me that any school that was receiving public funding be following the standards that we require of our public schools.
Thank you. Next question for Nicole first. Are you a clean elections candidate? Why or why not?
Yes, I am proudly a clean elections candidate. And hopefully everyone's familiar with that program, because it's a great program that the citizens actually established and then enhanced through 2 separate ballot questions. It's a program that allows people like me who don't have a lot of money or have access to people with a lot of money to be able to run for office and compete fairly. I think it's really made a difference in terms of people's ability to run for office. And additionally, in service, it has made it easier for folks to keep their constituents top of mind, which is of course what the job is. So I don't have any special interest groups that are giving me money or funding my campaign. And I don't think one bit about any of them when I'm in Augusta taking votes on behalf of our community. So I think the Clean Elections program has really benefited the state of Maine, and I would always run as a clean elections candidate in the future as well.
Thank you. Brian, are you a clean elections candidate? Why or why not?
I am a clean elections candidate, and for a lot of the reasons for being a clean election candidate is you get out to meet a lot more people. It's, it's sometimes a lot harder to get $5 out of somebody than $25 out of somebody. So I've had a lot of long conversations at the door. I thought I gave them more than their $5 worth at the door, but it does allow you to meet an awful lot of people and talk to a lot of people. And it does keep out any kind of beholding to special interest groups, which even include people that do endorsements, right? So you are much freer and to just go and do the work and vote your conscience so you can sleep at night.
Thank you very much. Next question to Brian, and this one's only to Brian, and then I'll have one only for Nicole. One constituent, Brian, called you the education senator, but asked why the state didn't get to 55% education funding until Democrats regained control of the Blaine House.
Well, thank you for the question. And it certainly wasn't for a lack of wanting to get there to 55%. So the funding formula is a very complicated formula, and it takes some time to understand all the parts and components to the essential programs and services funding formula. But like anything else in your own town governments and anywhere, it becomes a balancing act with the Appropriations Committee. So when you, as the chair of the Education Committee, striving to get to the 55% every year that I worked, it comes into the Appropriations Committee, and it gets balanced with the needs for health and human services, the needs in our correction system, and the needs in highways and roads and bridges. And so, and also with the limit of what is coming in into the state coffers. So we've been fortunate in the past couple of years to have an influx of money coming in through COVID and through the federal government to be able to get to the 55%. So it is wonderful that we're there. And we hope that in the future, as we're running into these high inflationary times and the economy might struggle here in the next few years, that we're able to continue to do that. So it's with great excitement that it hits the 55%, but it hasn't been easy all of these years. Every year, and it went well beyond the terms that I was in the legislature from when that 55% was passed. So every session, every legislative body has wrestled with that, and then they voted to create a budget that served as many people as possible.
Thank you so much. And the question for Nicole is, please explain your position on ownership of electricity sources and the pipeline.
Thank you for the question. I think I can interpret it to be slightly different than what it states. Maybe the CMP corridor was the
believe
point.
So.
Not exactly a pipeline, but in general, I think it's important for Mainers to benefit from new clean energy sources and to make sure that they are actually making a difference for climate change. And the CMP corridor did not pass muster with me and many of my colleagues, and of course, the majority of Maine people at the ballot box, as a proper solution for Maine to be a part of for climate change. And climate is a regional and a global challenge, and I look forward to Maine becoming actually more of a clean energy generator. We have some proposals that are being looked at for northern Maine, for instance, that they're very excited about connecting wind energy in farm fields to the New England grid. And so it's things like that that the CMP corridor would have possibly precluded that I think are really important economic and job opportunities for us. So I hope that's what the question was, and that is my answer to what I think the question was.
Thanks, Nicole. I read that as I got it, so I think your interpretation is as good as any. The question, and I'm afraid it might be our last one for both of you, starting with Brian, is about flavored tobacco. This questioner asserts that it is responsible for getting kids interested in smoking and wants to know if you would support a ban on flavored tobaccos.
Well, I can start by telling you that my mother's last words on the planet were, "I can't quit." She died of lung cancer. She started smoking in the military. She was an Army nurse. She tried quitting hundreds of times throughout her life, and she, passed away from lung cancer. And as I said, those were her last words on the planet: "I couldn't quit." So when it came time in the legislature, when a colleague had put in a bill to increase the age from 18 to 21, access to cigarettes, I jumped on as a co-sponsor. The short answer to the question, Jill, is yes. I would support a ban on flavored tobaccos because they are aimed at children. And I was kind of scolded by my libertarian friends. People have the right to make choices. But what I saw happen with my mother was that the addiction of the tobacco robbed her of her free will to make the choice to quit. So you'll find me strongly in that camp.
Thank you so much, Brian. Nicole, same question. Flavored tobaccos, would you support a ban?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's been interesting to see other, communities, not in this district, but elsewhere in the state, looking at this question. And in my first term, I sponsored a bill to try to look at what could we do around the advertising that happens that's directed at children. And it's a pretty legally complex area to work in because of the First Amendment. But I do think we can be doing a better job making sure that kids are not being targeted and that they can't easily access some of these things. I do think that a ban of many of the types of flavored tobacco products, especially candy flavors and things like that, fruity flavors, I guess you could say, could be very effective. I would want to see some additional research on that before totally committing, but I do think that I don't know that a bubblegum flavor is a really important option for people to have. And my apologies if that is your flavor of choice and you're watching right now, but that seems like something that might be targeted to children, and I would be okay with banning that.
It's Anne coming back on here. I'm afraid maybe we lost Jill. So I'm gonna take over here as a fill-in moderator. I think she was ready to call the closing remarks, and I forget who she said was going to go first on the closing remarks.
Nicole.
Okay, Nicole. Closing remarks. Go ahead, Nicole. We'll come back to you, Brian.
Thank you. And first, again, thank you to the forum sponsors and our moderator. Hopefully she'll come back. And thank you to everyone who's attended and for asking such great questions. Thank you also to Brian for participating and sharing your ideas, many of which I agree with. I think I have shown by my efforts here at home and also in Augusta that I'm a hard worker and a good listener and have an open and curious mind. And the more that I learn, the more that I know I need to learn to continue to be the most effective legislator I can be. Over the past few years, I've talked to thousands of voters of all parties at their doors in our district, and I've been working hard to find solutions to the top issues that face our community. I've been very interested in serving our community, I guess, going as far back as being a Girl Scout, picking up trash on the side of the road and sorting recycling at the recycling center in Ellsworth. Back when they used to let you do that as a kid. I think that's allowed anymore. And I'm running for re-election in the Maine Senate because I want to continue to serve our community and continue to represent you, because I think that we do need people that have experience and also the energy to solve the complex problems that our communities are facing during this time. And I hope that I have proven that I am a good listener. And sorry that I had to speak so much this evening. I like to listen a lot more than I speak, but I will continue to do that if reelected and continue to try to engage our community to find solutions together. So I'll conclude by saying that I think that one of the best things about living in Maine is that we work hard and we look out for each other as Mainers. And as your senator, I'm trying to do that as well too. And I hope that I can earn your vote again in November, because we are still all in this together and I still would love the opportunity to be here to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I apologize. My whole connection collapsed, and I assume that was your closing statement. Thank you. Brian, your turn for a closing statement.
Thank you. And it seems like maybe I ought to start by talking about broadband. We lost Jill in that, but it's been a great pleasure to be here tonight. And I really, this is the end of the job interview. And I'd like to reiterate, I believe I'm the most qualified candidate with the most experience in the areas that mostly affect us in Hancock County. We see unprecedented challenges to our lobster industry. We're seeing a lot of challenges with workforce development and keeping our communities running and alive. Education is critical, and we have a lot of work to do in education. But I'd also like to point out and that you'll find me listed on any kind of research that you do about voting records and senators squarely in the center. At a 75% environmental rating while I was in my last session, and an 85% business rating. So it is not at either end of this. You either have to be one or the other. You can live in both worlds. In fact, most of us do that live and work in Maine. So I'd like to bring a common sense, pragmatic approach to all the work that I do, because I'm living on the front lines. I'm running a small business. I'm hearing from all my employees who are being crushed by inflation. They're worried about their oil bills. It's $566 a month is the inflation tax, is what when you look up Maine. So there are real concerns coming into this winter that I think I have the skills and the aptitude and the knowledge to address. So I'd ask for your vote in November. And as soon as we get done, I've got to go cook a few more lobsters. It's not enough to just wear a red t-shirt. You gotta be out there helping.
Thank you so much, Brian. And thanks to both of the candidates for running. I know, believe me, that it is not an easy thing to do. And I'm very grateful that the two of you are willing to step up and vie for public office. Thanks to the observers out there in Zoom land, and especially to the League of Women Voters of Maine for putting on this wonderful series of forums for the candidates, of which tonight is opening night. It's 7 o'clock tonight. House District 13, which is Ellsworth, Waltham, and Central Hancock, will have a forum hosted by Cindy Wood, the managing editor of the Ellsworth American. That will be with Democrat Mark Worth and Republican John Linehan. And all of these are being recorded and can be found after the fact on the League of Women Voters of Maine website. So my hearty thanks to all of you, and I appreciate hearing what the candidates have to say and wish you both the best of luck.
And thank you to Jill for so ably moderating the event tonight. We really appreciate your help. Thank you all, and
Delighted to do it.
good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.